have every expectation that at least a half of the states in the country, so let's say about 26, will either outlaw abortion completely or start implementing bans. What it means is that the standard is no longer viability and that each state has its own choices around when it can ban access to abortion. That means an incredibly complicated and confusing landscape around abortion access. And it also means that 15 weeks in 2022 is probably 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. So it's not so much the fact of the ban or the number of weeks in the ban, it's that the standard is no longer viability and there is no longer a clear federal standard. We know that these bans will disproportionately affect women of color and in particular Black women. We know that poorer people will have harder times, more difficult outcomes than people with greater resources. And we're expecting greater criminalization, right? So that is, we expect that comes next, criminalization of women, of patients, of doctors, of providers. We are at the beginning of what comes next. We're at the beginning of planning for what happens at the end of Roe versus Wade and the beginning of a new era around sexual and reproductive health care. So what California is doing right now is taking a step into being a haven for people traveling here for abortion and for our own community around abortion. Here at Planned Parenthood Los Angeles, we're one of the larger providers of abortion in California. And we currently have up to 100 people a month traveling to us for sexual and reproductive health care, with some portion of that being abortion from out of state. And many of those people, we cover the cost of the services they need. We pay for in concert with a lot of other wonderful providers, national organizations, other healthcare providers, just the list goes on. We work together to make sure that there's a whole network of care that has in recent weeks and months included childcare, including supporting a partner flying and being here alongside someone. Sometimes it includes food or food vouchers. Sometimes it includes a place to stay. So anything you can imagine is already happening, and there's already a network of folks and organizations trying to put in place a system to make sure that people don't get left behind. So imagine if emergency rooms, emergency providers, transportation providers, airports, all the folks who will now be a part of what it is to get a safe and legal abortion, get training, get support, have said the word, have thought about this. And so when I think about what it is, and part of why I was an advocate for LA County taking this step, I don't think we know what's coming next, but I do think we're going to need a lot more people and a lot more resources to do all that we can to take care of the women and families that are going to start counting on those places in this country that do have, protect, elevate, and believe in safe and legal access to abortion for all people. Medication abortion is essentially a drug that stops pregnancy up to 12 weeks. And it's something that can be taken for the most part in the privacy of your own home. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a provider, so all of this is sort of take it with a bit of a grain of salt. But I expect that everything you can imagine will be done to stop the availability of medication abortion. It's already challenging, which is a soft way of saying that, for providers to provide care across state lines. Doctors are licensed in one state at a time. So a doctor in California can't necessarily practice medicine in Texas and vice versa. So while I'm very optimistic in one direction that telemab or medication abortion creates solutions for women early in pregnancy in some situations, I think exactly where we started is how that will play out. There will be some people who are able to figure out and work within and outside of the system to have access to medication abortion. And I'm going to do my damnedest to be one of those people who tries to make that work as much as possible. And it won't work for most people who are seeking abortions in their states and who don't have resources, period. It's a Band-Aid, and this is not a problem a Band-Aid will fix. But it's a very important piece of this moment. And I also want to honor the incredible people who are doing the work to make sure medication abortion is as available as possible. I just want to make sure that nobody thinks that that is going to take care of the overwhelming majority of women who are seeking abortions in this country. So there are other organizations and businesses that have reached out to us that have expressed an interest in forming or perhaps have formed these types of partnerships. I'm saying that way on purpose because many of those who want to work with us also feel the need for security. So I can't actually tell you who all we're working with. And I would also offer that every business that we've talked to has talked about this differently. What I would offer, though, is that really important for each business to be aware of the laws and regulations in their state and to be watching how those evolve. And to also understand that, and here's one of the things that happens, is some companies are having this run through their HR department. Well, I want you to imagine being an entry-level employee. It's probably one of your first or second or third jobs. And you have to tell your manager or your HR department you need an abortion and you need an abortion in another state. Maybe that goes well. Maybe that's okay. As someone who does this work all day, every day, I will tell you those conversations are hard. They take a lot of training. And even when you do it every day, all day, we don't always meet the moment and we're always trying to get better. So the idea that it would be okay for me to have to go to an HR department or a manager, the place I work, to get an abortion in another state, I'm glad companies are trying to do it, but that's not the world or the country that I think I live in or that I want to live in. May 14th, there's a day of action across the country. Be part of that. Raise your voice before that. Raise your voice after that. Go to law school, go to medical school. And imagine, I was on a panel with folks sort of saying, Roe v. Wade was the floor. Roe v. Wade didn't solve all of the problems, but we've been for the last, 50 years, fighting to hang on to access to abortion. And it wasn't enough. So let's actually take this moment and think about what it would be for all people in this country to truly have access to sexual and reproductive health care and be able to celebrate their bodies and their humanity. Let's not ask for Roe v. Wade back. Let's expect and demand the humanity of sexual and reproductive health care in its fullness, because that's truly what it is. Sexual and reproductive health care is about being able to be human and to aspire to a full life. I just encourage us to take this moment, make it bigger and make it better, because it hasn't been enough thus far. If there's some silver lining in this moment, it's, I think, that this decision was leaked ahead of time and that there's the possibility for anger, and that anger will move people in Washington in a direction that we've yet to see them take appropriate or adequate steps in. Right now, I have every expectation that more and more women are going to have to travel here and to other places across the country. But I'm hopeful that over the next several weeks, before this decision is formalized, that we will see so much anger and outrage that there is some hope for a different path. That said, I'm not that hopeful. And my fear is that this is now the fight of a generation. It's not 2 years, it's not 3 years, it's not 4 years. Either we do something now, or we're in this fight, in this conversation, and it gets worse from here for 10 years to a generation.